Hi there. I'm recording this video 6 days after Hurricane Ian made landfall on the west coast of Florida. Now, during this time leading up to the storm, during the storm, and then after, I received so many texts and emails from wonderful people all around the country and then even outside of the United States, just to see how I was doing. And just the kindness was just overwhelming from so many of you. And then after people knew that I was okay, then I was just peppered with so many other questions. Okay, so what is it like going through the storm? What does it look like there? How much damage is there? Just lots and lots of different questions. And then of course, how is this going to impact the real estate market in your area? So I thought, you know what? So many good questions from people. So I decided let's make a video about it and my experience going through Hurricane Ian. Hi, I'm Jill Thomas and I live on the west coast of Florida in Sarasota. And I'm a real estate agent. I cover Sarasota, Bradenton, Northport, Venice, Lakewood Ranch. So here is my Hurricane Ian story. Now, let me say right away that anything that I've gone through in regards to the storm is completely trivial. It's minor. It is nothing in compared to the hundreds of thousands of people whose lives have been turned upside down. Their homes are ruined, their livelihood, and then even the health and lives of friends and loved ones, have been impacted. So please don't think that I'm trying to play up anything that I've done. That's not my intention at all. Just because I've received so many questions, I just want to share in these things. And I was actually kind of hesitant about making this video just because I didn't want to come off as sounding like a victim or anything. So I want to say that up front. I just want to share some things about what it's like to go through the storm, what it's like here locally, and what's going on to clean things up. So here is my story about going through Hurricane Ian, and then of course the aftermath of what it's like in our area today. Number one, before the storm. Now, as you know, Hurricane Ian hit Florida on Wednesday, September 28th. Now, leading up to the storm, you see those spaghetti models, you see those predictions. It was all over the place, up and down the west coast, but really not so much farther south. They were saying the Tampa area, then it was like maybe Big Bend, which is where, you've got, turns into the Panhandle up that way. Then it was, still really focused on the Tampa area. Then it was saying Sarasota was going to get the first hit. But then, as a lot of times these storms do, it kept shifting farther east sooner than what they anticipated. So Fort Myers just got blown. It was devastating. And I'm sure you saw those pictures online, the videos. Fort Myers is no longer the same as what it was. It's going to take a long time for them to bounce back and to recover from this because it looks like a war zone. Buildings and everything were just completely wiped out. And it's really overwhelming to see those photos and those videos, just knowing that so much has been destroyed. So the hard part with hurricane coming is, even though the scientists say, it's going to be farther north, the Fort Myers people were kind of sitting pretty comfortable, you just never know where it's going to go. So you do need to prep pretty well, regardless of where they're saying. If it looks like it could be somewhere within your area, you need to prep. And what's hard too is sometimes people will want to leave town. Often they do. They will evacuate. They want to get away from it. So I have one colleague who first went to Naples thinking that was going to be the safer place. And then in the end, it was scary because it looked like Naples could have been the main target. So she ended up going to the East Coast to Fort Lauderdale. I have another colleague who went to Orlando, and not that Orlando saw a lot of wind, but there was a lot of water. So sometimes you're just not sure where to go unless you just completely leave the state, and you have to really keep going because, as you saw, the storm just keeps going straight up as well. So it's just not that Florida got hit, impacts these other states also. So knowing what to do, where to go, is a hard thing to decide. Now, there's other things you need to do to prep your house. You always want to make sure you have gas in your car. You want to make sure your cell phones are charged all the time. There's food things you need to do to prep your food, to try to preserve as much of your food in your refrigerator and freezer as possible, because if you only lose power for a short time, you can, maybe save those things. If you've lost it for days and days, that's another story. If you have a generator, you want to make sure that you have gas for your generator. If you have a gas grill, you want to make sure that you've got propane tanks for that. And then of course you want non-perishable foods, you want water. There's so much you need to go out and buy, batteries for flashlights or, candles and things like that. So there's so much you need to do to prep for these storms and to make sure that you're in good shape with all of that. So there's a lot of that going on during this time as they're saying, okay guys, a big one's coming. We got to get prepared for it. Now, my house was built in the late 70s and I have have the original 70s windows, so I don't have hurricane shutters, and of course there's no impact glass. So there was nothing I needed to do with that, but I had a lot of things I needed to bring into the house, things off of my lanai. I brought in all the cushions for my furniture out there. I have a lot of potted plants outside. I bring those in because you just don't want projectiles and things flying around. You want to try to minimize as much damage as possible. And actually, I want to pressure wash down my lanai. It is filthy from all the rain and wind. So right now I'm sitting in my kitchen and I am surrounded by cushions from my lanai furniture, and I've got potted plants behind me, all around me here on the ground that you can't see. And so that's just part of the process of trying to preserve as much as possible. So that's what I had to do at my house. Now, I rode out the storm at my parents' house, and my parents' house is built about 20 years after my home in the late 90s. Again, they don't have hurricane shutters. They don't have impact glass. They have those original windows. And so I went there and rode out the storm with them. So we did the best we could to prepare our homes, to minimize damage to our property, to our homes, and then of course you're also doing it to protect other people's homes as well. Now, as we lead up to these storms, you're going to see that the flow and rhythm of everything in the community really changes, because starting on Monday, businesses started to shut down. People were sending their employees home. Some businesses finished out the workday on Monday, or maybe worked until 12 noon on that Tuesday, because again, people need to go home, prepare their property, prepare their things. They need to go shopping, and bless their hearts, the people that work at grocery stores or the gas stations, places like that, they work till the bitter end in order for people to be as prepared as possible. And so hats off to even those types of workers as well to help with that. And schools are shutting down in preparation for that, because a lot of the schools are used as shelters, so people can evacuate and go to a shelter if they want to. So everything's shutting down, so the whole rhythm flow of what's going on in our community has completely changed at this point. So that's kind of a taste of what it's like before a storm. Number 2, during the storm. Now, this Hurricane Ian was not only a fast storm, it was a Cat 4, as we already talked about, but the storm was huge. It was massive in size. I saw images online where Hurricane Charlie, which came through, I want to say like 14 years ago, and that hit more of the Punta Gorda Northport area, and it did cause some damage down there at that time. But that was a small storm, because the entire size of Hurricane Charlie could fit into the eye of Hurricane Ian. So it just goes to show the power of this storm. It wasn't just fast, but it was humongous, and it did impact a good chunk of the state, because then as it crosses over, there's not enough landmass to slow it down, just because it's so big. So that's part of the scariness of a storm like this. And because it was so large, typically with these other storms, they blow through pretty fast, but this was a very slow moving storm, and it was so powerful. So what happened is Sarasota sat on the northern wall of the eye of the storm. And that's why we saw serious winds for about 12 hours. Now, when a storm comes through it like this, it's not like you're flicking a switch and the winds start and they stop. So it's a slow build up, and then it gets crazy, and then it eventually starts to die down as it moves away. So that's what was really hard, is we saw these really extremely strong winds for so long. And so that's something that added to the damage. Now, the upside to where we were in this storm was because we were at the northern wall, and these storms travel counterclockwise. So what was nice is even during high tide, because it was traveling counterclockwise, it was pushing the water out and away from our area. They even showed pictures up in Tampa of the bay up there, Tampa Bay, and it was dry as could be for really far out, just because it was pulling out all of the water. So that helped initially to minimize flooding and some of that water damage. For those people who are on the south side of the storm, because it's traveling counterclockwise, when that water is pushing water inland, and so that causes more damage initially. So there's a lot to it with these storms on where they land. It's not exactly where they land, but where you're at in relation to all of that. It does make a really big difference and impacts, the damage in your area. Then on Wednesday afternoon, when the storm was really taking off, I had a customer who had just closed down a house the Friday before. So not even a full week have these people owned this house, and their lot of this home was just is just gorgeous. It's a beautiful lot, beautiful trees and landscaping and everything. And this one focal point, this oak tree in their front yard that's relatively close to the house, came down right away at the beginning of the storm. Now, thankfully, it didn't land on their house, but she sent me some pictures I'll put up here for you to see. And it just broke my heart because here, they didn't even live there a whole week, and they're dealing with this. So that was, that just made me so sad for them that they had to deal with that right away. Now, my house lost power right away. I actually have like a Ring doorbell and I got a Ring camera on my lanai. And so I wanted to watch it. I made sure I charged my batteries well prior to the storm because I thought, well, if I don't lose power, maybe I can watch the storm at my house to see what's going on. But I lost power too quick for that to make much of a difference for me to monitor that. But thankfully, my parents never lost power. It flickered a bunch of times. One time it was off for like 30 seconds. So that was a blessing because, we could business as usual. Now they did lose like internet and cable, which, no big deal there, but at least we never lost power there. So I was able to keep my cell phones charged and, I was okay with answering people's questions and things like that. As they were texting me to see how I was doing, I could stay in touch with my family up north as well. The one thing that was interesting during the storm is, I have my little dog, Carly, who's at the groomers right now. And that's why she's not barking in this video. And my parents have 2 dogs. So because the storm lasted so long, we had to take the dogs outside. So we'd leash them up. We took them out the front door because on the side where they usually go to the bathroom, that kind of fills up with water pretty quick when we have bigger storms. So that wasn't an option. They didn't want to go out there. So we'd take them out front, and it was raining for sure, but it wasn't like heavy rains like we usually get like in the summertime. But what it was is with that wind and then the rain, it was like needles hitting your face. So it wasn't just that you were tolerating getting a little bit wet or the wind, but that pressure of the rain on your face and your, arms and stuff, it actually really quite hurt. So we were quick just to take the dogs out and bring them back in. So that's just a little taste of what it's like to go through the storm. You hear these sounds, you hear the noises, the whistling of all of it. And after a while, it kind of got to my head a bit, my head's spinning, and then you're starting to see pictures and things that are happening in other areas. And so this sort of keeps piling on you, thinking about what's going on everywhere else. And you're wondering, okay, what's going to happen to us next? So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts going through your mind while you're sitting there going through a storm. All right, number 3, after the storm. So Thursday morning, we get up super anxious to see what's going on outside. So we were able to get out, as the sun is rising. It's still, a little windy and things, but definitely manageable. We wanted to see what kind of destruction we had around here and what's going on. So right away, just trees are down everywhere, completely uprooted, or large branches have broken off. Streets are blocked off because of the trees. Near my house, there's some power lines, and trees have fallen over on these power lines and snapped them or leaning on them. Most people are out of power. Like I said, my parents never lost power. I know a few other people that never lost it, but most people did. And it's kind of funny too, because with Hurricane Irma, which was just a puff of air in comparison to what we've got, more people lost power for that one. So I don't understand how it works, but whatever. So just trees are down everywhere, fences, it just was very overwhelming to see all this damage. At my church, Philippi Creek is behind that. And so every time we have any good storms, the whole parking lot just gets filled with water. That always makes national news just because it's an overwhelming sight. So, so we drove past the church. Needless to say, I was anxious to get to my house to see if there was any damage. What happened with those big trees in the backyard, where my windows broke, what happened. And thankfully, when I got here, everything was fine. Those trees didn't come down. Of course, like everybody, I lost some branches and palm fronds and things like that. But hey, I can live with all that. My other next door neighbor, they had a tree in their backyard that toppled over and landed on the fence in between us. Now that fence is owned by that neighbor, so that's on them to get that repaired. But again, these things are minor. My power was out for a few days, so in the end I had to throw away everything in my refrigerator and freezers. I wasn't able to save anything. Again, that's okay. I'll take that. This is just so minor in comparison to what other people have been through. I also went to one of my listings that's under contract because there's a ton of trees in the front yard. I did this on Friday, and some of these branches and things landed on the house. Thankfully, there was no major damage to the house or anything like that, and we were able to get a crew out there right away to get that cleaned up. So that was a huge help. So, we just see a lot of destruction like that. Like I said, just a lot of trees down, a lot of fences down, a lot of power out. And then, of course, pictures are are starting to roll in, starting to see these things online on Facebook, of course, news sites. And then I'll be honest with you, what was a real help too to see what was going on is, like I mentioned before, I've got like the Ring cameras. Well, you've got the app on your phone and there's like a community section where people can ask questions or talk about things. So people were talking about what they were seeing or who had power, who didn't have power. And so that's been really interesting to follow too. There's other apps like, what's it called? Nextdoor. And people are asking questions on there and seeing what's going on. And so that's been, man, it's just such a huge thing to see all that. But seeing all these pictures, the devastation, the destruction, see what's happening at Fort Myers, and then of course, Port Charlotte and Northport as well. So all of this is starting to come in and you're really kind of tuning in to seeing what's really happening and the destruction going on in these other areas. Number 4, after the storm. Now, just because the storm has left us doesn't mean that all of our problems have left us as well. There was somebody who wanted to schedule an appointment to talk to me who lives out west, and it wasn't like a buyer or seller or something else for my business. And they said, well, everything should be good now, right? Like you just clean things up and you're like good to go. And I'm like, oh, no. It's like, honestly, I feel like it's just begun. So to add insult to injury after all of this, a levee down in Northport and then one out east with the Myakka River, they broke. And so down in Northport, there was some standing water in the streets during all of this. But then once that levee broke, boy, there was a lot more flooding that took place. I personally know several families that had to be rescued by boat to get out of their house, or maybe there's even greater damage in their home. Now, Northport is still part of like the market area I cover. It's in Sarasota County at the south end. Then just below that is Port Charlotte, and that's at the top of the most northern portion of Charlotte County. So we're seeing still a lot of devastation going on here even in my area. Even though we didn't get a direct hit, even though we're not as bad as Fort Myers, there's still a lot of people in this area hurting. Then people are, in cleanup mode. People are coming out and helping each other and getting these trees and things cleaned up. So when you have these massive trees that come down, it's not like you can just easily bundle it like you normally do with your lawn debris. So with our trash pickup, they do, lawn pickup. And so there's ways you can prep that, for them to pick up. And they still do that. So they did that for me. Yeah, yesterday on Monday is my trash pickup day. And so I put a lot of that lawn debris in like 5 different garbage cans, put that at the side of the road. They took that. But when people have these large trees, they just pile it all up at the curb. And sometimes these piles of branches and things can be, taller than a human being, taller than any of us. They're just massive piles. And then in time, a special truck will come around where they'll grab all that and take it away. But they don't do that right away. It might be a month or 2 months or 3 months. So we're going to have all these visual reminders for a long time of what has happened. So we'll see that quite a while yet. Then what's really special is, people come from all over the country to help us get back to business. And you've got these linemen, these people that work on these power lines that come from everywhere to help out. And every day you see these vehicles going up and down the roads. There's convoys going, up and down 75 to help us get our power back right away. And hats off to Governor DeSantis on how he can organize things and get things going and get the job done in such an efficient way. Here in the state of Florida, most residents love Ron DeSantis, and I am one of them. Also, hats off again to our first responders, because I think I'd mentioned earlier in the video, maybe not, that once the winds get up to a certain speed, the first responders will not go out because it's not safe for them to do so. But then as soon as it was safe, sirens were going off all the time. I felt like I was hearing sirens in like 30, 60-minute intervals. Now, my sister up north was like, well, what would be going on so often? I'm like, well, first of all, we have no street lights or very few street lights. So people maybe aren't driving well, and there could be accidents. There could be issues with people using their generators and the gas. It could be people with health issues. So there's a lot of things going on too. So those first responders are working endlessly. And so we're grateful for all of them. And then honestly, just silly things. Like I said before, I had to throw away all my food. Now, my girlfriend was telling me that her and her daughter took a walk in their neighborhood the other night, and it was the night before their trash pickup, and walking past everybody's garbage cans, all they could smell was rotted food, and her daughter was gagging just over the smell. So there's a lot happening there. Those are, again, just these little signs of all these problems, different things that people have had to go through. But generally speaking, here in Sarasota, we have been so blessed and so fortunate that it could have been a lot worse. And then in time, we're starting to see the water recede, even down there in Northport and some of these other heavier hit areas and areas out east. And so in time, that is starting to go away. But again, there's still a lot of debris. You'll see dead fish maybe around, depending on where you're at. So it is. We definitely have a mess on our hands, and there's still a lot of cleanup going on. Number 5, community. Now, I think this is what's really special, because during these hard times, you just see the communities come together, and that sense of helping each other out really starts to shine through. Even if you don't really know your neighbors that well, people are really helping each other out. Most people have really good attitudes. Like I said, right away, went out the next day, in the morning to see what was going on, and you saw neighbors coming out, talking to each other, checking in on each other, and then people are helping each other, maybe take off hurricane shutters, get all those trees cleaned up, get everything to the curb. Everybody was just so helpful, so kind, and it's just really sweet. And then, people, like I said, so many people didn't have power. So people with power, inviting folks over, hey, come over to my house, take a shower. Let me give you some ice. What can I get for you? And people just helping each other out. And sometimes it's just in the little things, because at the grocery stores, a lot of the shelves are bare with some of the most needed types of food. So instead of people going to the grocery store to stock up and oh yeah, I'm going to refill my fridge, you just get what you need to save stuff for other people. So you save the eggs for somebody else. You don't buy, 2 or 3 gallons of milk. You just buy what you need so that other people have an opportunity to have their needs met as well. So you see a lot of that. Like I said, I'm supposed to have my tree guy come on Friday to take down these trees, and I was super anxious to have that done. I couldn't wait to clean up my backyard more, but I texted him on Monday and just said, hey, listen, Jacob, don't worry about me. You take care of people who need help. And he's like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. And so I said, we'll deal with this later. So I'll wait about a month maybe, and then get back to him and see about rescheduling to have the trees come out. So who knows, might not be until after the first of the year, but so be it, if that's what it takes. And so you see a lot of special things like that happening around, and people are just jumping in to help out, which is really sweet. All right, number 6, real estate. This is my final point. Now, like I said before, a lot of people are still asking me, okay, Jill, what is this going to do to the market in your area? And people maybe who are planning on coming down this fall, they're like, well, should I still come? Am I going to get a better deal? What is this going to look like? Okay, right now, I really don't know. Now, obviously, we're going to have a certain percentage of majorly damaged homes. So that's one thing. And then there's going to be some homes with little damage, and there's going to be a lot of homes with no damage. So honestly, I don't really know. And people who are going to be totally displaced, whether they're in Northport or in another area farther south, people still need a place to live. So, we might see an influx of people from southern counties coming up this way looking for housing or looking for a rental or something like that. And some people are going to be maybe a little bit less picky, and they're going to go, well, this might not be my dream house, or it might not be perfect for me, but at least it's a roof over my head. So I don't know if in the end it's going to level out. I don't know if there's going to be some deals to be had, if you will. I really don't know. I think only time's going to tell. So right now, I don't really want to say anything in regards to real estate and how it's going to impact our market, just because it could go a couple different ways. And truthfully, I just don't know. So we'll see about real estate. Maybe that's a video, 3 months down the road from now. One thing I can say I'm pretty confident about is insurance rates, though, because insurance is a tough gig down here, homeowners insurance in Florida to begin with. And if you've seen any of my videos, I mention this in virtually every video. And so now I think, because the storm is so huge and there was so much damage, I have no doubt that insurance rates are going to be clobbered again. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind about housing here. In conclusion, everybody has a story when it comes to a storm or something major like this that happens in their lives. And like I said, my story is so small, so insignificant compared to other people's. And what's tolerable for one person might be a hardship for another person, and the other way around. My sister works at Publix, and she's hearing stories from so many people. Everybody wants to tell their story as they're going through the line, and my sister is not one to cry easily. I'm the crier, she is not. But she is struggling to hold back the tears as she's at work, hearing what people have gone through, how they persevered. And so she's just like, Jill, I'm just letting people talk. That's all they need to do is talk. They need that release. And that's what a lot of what we're seeing around here. It can be very heartbreaking. We do feel overwhelmed for other folks, but we're here to help out as a community, and I just think it's a beautiful thing to see that. Now, if you do have a story about the hurricane, please put it down in the comments below, so other people can hear your experience, or if you have participated in or have witnessed how people have been pulling together in the community to help out. That's also really special as well. So please feel free to share your story, guys. And like I said, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. And I hope that this was a help to you. You guys have a great day. Thanks.